it would be a disaster for the government to give up on an obesity strategy that's been hard won, but is also supported by pretty much all the health experts in the country who've worked really hard to, with the previous government to make this happen.
I am, of course, talking about chef Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, whose River Cottage cookbooks and TV series have been a steady presence in kitchens and televisions across the country. He's also a ferocious campaigner, taking on obesity, fishing, and the use of plastics in supermarkets. He's back now with his 10th cookbook, River Cottage Good Comfort, which aims to make home cooking classics a bit healthier. And we could all do with a bit of comfort right now, let's face it. Hugh joins me now. Hugh, before we talk about the new book, there was an announcement yesterday that the government are thinking of giving up their obesity strategy. In fact, may already have given up their obesity strategy. And obviously, I wanted to get your feelings on that because you've been such a campaigner on that topic.
Well, my feelings are that it would be a disaster for the government to give up on an obesity strategy that's been hard won, but is also supported by pretty much all the health experts in the country who've worked really hard to, with the previous government to make this happen. It seems to me that it's based on a sort of ideological notion of not nannying us or not wanting to tell us how to live our lives, rather than offering any real help. I mean, the obesity strategy is about preventing big brands from targeting kids with unhealthy foods, but it's also about motivating food manufacturers to tweak their products. We're going to be talking about tweaking home cooking to make it healthier, but there's absolutely no reason why the big brands can't be tweaking their products to make them a little healthier. And that's what the obesity strategy is about. And if you take away the incentives and the motivation for them to do that, we'll just go on being sold more and more of the seriously unhealthy, high-fat, high-sugar foods that have made so many people in the UK unwell. So I really hope they'll think again. And if they don't think again, I really hope we'll get a chance to vote for a properly elected government who will reinstate a very sensible obesity strategy.
Hugh, just on that topic, I mean, some of the aspects of the obesity strategy have been less popular and proved perhaps not particularly effectual, like calories on menus and things like that. Do you think that, there's been too much focus on that sort of thing and less on real, tangible action, as it were, that has an impact with families on a daily basis?
Well, what's going to have an impact with families is when the food they're being offered is made healthier by the people who make it. And there's a lot of attention on, well, if you put a sugar tax on something, or if you ask people to put calories on menus, there's two different actions, but we need to really pull all the levers we can to help people. But the thing about putting calories on menus, a lot of people do find it helpful when they're trying to eat healthily. I totally understand that for some people who are struggling with eating disorders and who are trying to get away from the
tyranny of the calorie.
I understand that it's hard. I don't have hugely strong views about the calories on menus issue. I do have stronger views on things like putting the sugar tax into reverse. Sugar tax has succeeded in persuading soft drinks manufacturers especially to reduce the insane amount of sugar in their products. It hasn't reduced the price of those products, it's reduced the amount of sugar. And that's been good for people. That's starting to filter through we're seeing, that filter through into people's better health. So to put that into reverse is going to do nothing but damage.
It's so true, the thing with the sugar tax. And the other night I had a cheeky late night bowl of a big brand cereal before I went to bed. And I spent at least half the night awake, absolutely dying of thirst, which was a salutary reminder of how much salt there is in so many products as well. And it does seem that actually, to be saying to people, well, look, we're going to get rid of this strategy because you can't afford it and we don't want to be telling you what to do. And it's far better that you have food full of sugar than that you don't have food at all. I mean, that seems to be something very callous about it and slightly, I don't know, Victorian.
I completely agree. And I think, further down the line, the NHS is going to feel it's going to
Yes.
add an extra burden to the NHS, and it's going to shorten people's lives. It's that the truth is that brutal, and all for some ideological idea that, but also even the ideology, if we don't interfere with people's lives or their health, or we don't take action as a government to improve people's health, that went out of the window with COVID. We had months and months where we were all asked to stay inside. If you could ask people to stop working and stay at home and completely change their lives in order to protect the health of the nation, why can't you encourage industrial food manufacturers to make healthier foods, to take a little bit of the sugar out, maybe add a little bit more fiber in, and further down the line, the NHS will feel the benefit and the entire population will feel the benefit.
Well, you are clearly putting words into your own mouth, as it were. That's not the expression I was looking for, but it'll do for now, because the new cookbook is about all kinds of comfort food. I think comfort food, first of all, how would you define it? Because when I think of comfort food, I think of satisfying food. I think of food that sort of sits heavy in your tummy. So if you're feeling anxious, it kind of settles things down. But also, relatively cheap and cheerful.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of comfort food recipes, the best ones, then they don't tend to be made from particularly expensive ingredients. They tend to be old family favorites that have stood the test of time. I would define comfort food as food that that genuinely comforts you and makes you feel good, a little bit better, about life and about the world. Than you did before you ate it, or indeed than you did before you walked into the kitchen and started preparing it, or smelt it bubbling on the cooker, or coming out of the oven. A lot of it's about anticipation. You're going to get one of your favorite meals, and maybe it's something you grew up with, maybe it's something that your mum and dad or your gran used to cook for you. And there are a few classics of the canon that most of us will sign up to. Things like pies, savory pies, something with a nice mashed potato topping, or a little bit of crust of pastry, or thick, creamy, gooey things that are a little bit crispy on top. And of course, sweet treats like cakes and puddings, sponges, those crumbles with custard.
But so is it wrong of me then to think of comfort food as not particularly healthy?
Well, I think it's not necessarily wrong of you, because I think I think it's wrong to assume that it has to be unhealthy. And a lot of comfort foods are made with a little extra knob of butter and a lot of extra sugar. But a lot of the tweaks and adjustments I've made to the dishes in the book are about adding more good things, not so much taking things away or demonizing. But since we've been talking about sugar, that is one ingredient that I have reduced in a lot of recipes. And it is extraordinary, really. This applies to both, the manufacturing of sweet foods, but also to your home cooking. For some reason, we seem to just take it on trust that the prescribed amount of sugar in a lot of old school recipes is the right amount of sugar, and that any less will somehow be unsatisfying. And it turns out that just isn't the case. And in fact, in our restaurant cookery school at River Cottage, some years ago, we started just as a matter of routine, taking 15-20% of the sugar out of our sweets and treats and puddings. Nobody even noticed. And if anyone noticed at all, they were saying, gosh, why is this so delicious? And if you did actually fess up to having taken the sugar out, they go, yeah, it's a little bit less sweet. It's so much nicer. And actually, I think you can go a long way just dialing down the sugar, even in some of our favorite dishes, before anyone would begin to protest. It's just how we've had it. And even I've got a sweet tooth. I used to be a pastry chef many years ago, and I've been cooking and baking sweet things all my life. It's how I got into cooking at home with my mum. But I don't think I've even necessarily retrained my sweet tooth very much. I think I've just found out that actually it doesn't bother me if there's a little bit less sugar.
But is there no impact? I don't know. I'm thinking of things like sugar to thicken cream, or, maybe that's a bad example. You're going to totally put me right on this, I know. But are there examples of recipes where if you take the sugar out, it doesn't work in the way it's supposed to?
Well, not many. But, you mean from a sort of chemical point of view?
Yes.
Meringues, definitely. Meringues, you're going to struggle if you take some of the sugar out of meringue. Cake, on the other hand, no problem. Biscuits, on the other hand, no problem. Crumble, even custard. If you make a kind of half a litre of custard with half milk, half cream, 4 or 5 egg yolks, a traditional recipe might suggest you put upwards of 100 grams of sugar in there. You really, really don't need any more than about 25 or 30 grams, and it tastes really sweet. And yet somehow we've been pouring this really sugary, sickly custard on our crumble and getting it down. But that feeling you described after those dishes of feeling, I think comfort foods can deliver all their promise and all their feeling of giving us a warm cuddle and making us feel nice without actually leaving a huge ball in our stomach, or indeed a kind of crazy sugar rush
I don't want the ball in my stomach. I want the feeling of the ball in my stomach. And I do totally agree with you, it's not, because often, when you eat what we're describing as comfort food in the old-fashioned sense of it, all you feel is sleepy and it's time for a quick nap on the sofa because, it's got so much white flour in it, or all of those things. But let's take something. I'm thinking truly of making a spaghetti bolognese tonight, and I'm quite interested in your twist on spaghetti bolognese, because that's another sort of classic comfort food. My kids go, oh yes, please, we're going to have spaghetti bolognese. Right. But I'm worried about how they're going to react to your one.
Well, give it a whirl. I think it's going to go down a treat. I mean, the first thing is spaghetti bolognese isn't just, it's not just meat and tomatoes. There's always got to be a little bit of veg in there. And actually, that's where the natural sweetness comes from onions, carrots, maybe a little bit of celery. And you can just up those a little bit. But the one thing I suggest you get into your bolognese is some lentils, or maybe even some beans. It's just a slight mind shift because it pushes it a little bit towards the chili con carne, but without the chili. But it's all about balance. I'm not suggesting that you make a spaghetti bolognese that's got 10 grams of beef mince and everything else is a vegetable. It's just about getting a little bit more of the stuff in there that is good for you. And the other conversion that I think is worth making for your friends and family is to wholemeal pasta and brown rice, because these ingredients that have got more fiber in, and fiber really is an important part of our diet. There's a lot of conversations these days about gut health, and rightly so. And the main thing that helps us have a healthy gut is fiber in our diets and a lot of variety. So lots of fruit and veg, lots of whole foods. Not when I say whole foods, I don't just mean brown rice and lentil. All foods that are whole, all the fruits, all the veg, all the nuts, all the seeds, and whole grain flours. So a lot of home baking now. I use a light wholemeal flour for cakes and crumpets. Again, it's an adaptation that nobody has a problem with. If you make a Victoria sponge with light wholemeal flour, it's actually got a slightly nuttier flavor. Doesn't change the texture at all, but it's got more fiber in, and that's going to do you good. The wholemeal spaghetti got more fiber in.
But I have been getting suggestions from you for comfort food, and I'm going to read a couple out before I ask Hugh for his favourite from his new book, because some of these suggestions are quite bizarre. I'm dying to see what Hugh thinks of them. So we have a plate of runner beans with a poached egg on top, maybe two. Make that more healthy, is one listener's suggestion. And then you should try vanilla ice cream drizzled with olive oil and a bit of salt. Actually, I quite fancy that. Tastes wonderful and totally different to what you may expect. You're welcome, says Mike. Hugh, do either of those tickle your fancy, as my granny used to say? And what is your favourite comfort food recipe in the book?
Well, firstly, your listeners' excellent suggestions. I mean, that's a take on beans on toast, isn't it? Runner beans with an egg on top, instead of baked beans out of a tin. I actually runner beans. I love runner beans, and I actually like them there's a lovely dish where they're slowly cooked in a garlic and tomato sauce, so you get that green bean goodness, and that would work really well on toast with an egg on top. So I think they might be onto something there. And olive oil on vanilla ice cream. I've tried that. It's kind of a thing. It's been knocking around a bit, and it's really interesting. You can actually
No, hold on. You're using words like interesting rather than delicious.
No, it's tasty, and it really is tasty. And you can even put olive oil into an ice cream. You can sort of swirl it through like a ripple, because you know how olive oil, as it gets cold, it slightly thickens up. So you can actually work it through an ice cream.
So you get a vein of grease in there.
Well, yeah, I know, but what is it? What is a cookie dough in an ice cream other than a vein of fatty stuff? I mean, or fudge or something like that. It's just another interesting flavor and texture, and a good one. I mean, I make tomato ice cream sometimes, and that can be really delicious. And I definitely have a little bit of olive oil on that.
We are, let's face it, the lucky ones. We're sitting here talking about food as much as a luxury as it is, sustenance. And obviously, for a lot of people at the moment, it's a real struggle to pay food bills. I went to the supermarket the other day to buy food for my daughter, and I literally couldn't believe how much money it cost for some few basic ingredients. Is your book also? I mean, I wonder how you feel about the situation that, we've got more food banks in this country now than we do McDonald's branches, which on the one hand may sound like good news, but on the other, possibly not. And I wonder how much you feel it's possible to help people through this period by actually encouraging the use of fresh ingredients and padding out a spag bowl, for example, as we were just discussing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of comfort food recipes are not traditionally made of the most expensive ingredients. You use cheaper meats like mince, or you're using the cheaper cuts like pork belly for a lovely pork belly hot pot or a goulash. And obviously meat is expensive, and vegetables are less expensive. So more veg, less meat is a pretty good way forward to help balance balance the budget as well as balance for your health in some dishes. I think the other thing that's important is to be really really careful with your leftovers. And there's a whole chapter on leftovers in the book, and some of our favorite foods are leftovers, and maybe we haven't tried them for a while. Good old-fashioned things like bubble and squeak, or a hash, where if you've got any leftover meat at all, you fry it up with some mashed potato and some veg. Also pulses, pulses and whole grains, which have got lots of fiber in them. They're not always the cheapest ingredients, but they're not particularly expensive, and they fill us up more. I mean, brown rice and whole grain pasta. And actually, I did go online a few days ago and I checked the prices, and in a lot of supermarkets, wholemeal pasta is priced the same as regular white pasta, and brown rice is either the same or only a little bit more expensive than white rice. And these are ingredients that fill you up and keep you well. And that's really important at the moment. Also we don't want to, we want to eat food that keeps us happy as well as keeps us healthy. And I think that the comfort food canon has lots of recipes in it that are not super expensive. I mean, for example, instead of having a Sunday roast, something like a toad in the hole, where half a dozen sausages and a lovely batter, which in my book you can add some big chunks of apple and some roasted onions for a little bit of sweetness and an extra savory edge, and to turn it into a whole meal.
Actually, that's funny you should say toad in the hole, because we had Tom Kerridge on the program a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about how his mother used to make, because they didn't have money for a Sunday roast, but she used to like to have his friends over when he was a kid, and she used to make a sort of Sunday roast shape out of minced beef, and then slice it. So and sausage meat. So it was so it looked like a roast lunch, and actually sliced it. It sort of felt like they were having a roast lunch. And there are all kinds of things you can do, aren't there, with ingredients to turn them, to sort of metamorphose them into other things.
Meatloaf in the shape of a roast chicken. Yeah, why not? Yes.
Excuse me. Let's see you try and do that. I'd like to see you shaping that sculpture.
I'm wondering. Tom is a wonderful and very creative guy. I'm wondering what particular roast his. I mean, he's obviously inherited these skills from someone. I'm wondering what sort of shape of roast his mum made.
I love the idea of doing it in the shape of a chicken. Listen, Hugh. I mean, your contemporary Jamie Oliver has also tried to address the issue of healthy eating, particularly in young people. But when he protested against Boris Johnson's U-turn on the strategy, he was accused of waging a war on the working class. Why do you think it is that getting involved in food causes such a sort of escalation in temper in some areas of the community? And is it something you've experienced?
Food's a touchy subject. People have very strong views about the foods that they like and the foods that they don't like. And a lot of people don't really like people kind of coming in and talking to them about what they might want to eat. But lots of people do. Lots of people are very open to the idea of new recipes and changing things, maybe eating in a different way from their previous generations in their family. So I'm very ready to go in and talk about food and offer things up to people who are ready and willing to take them. But I do think that food is political in a number of ways. But food is crucial in a couple of ways that are always going to be political. one of them is the food choices we make shape the agriculture that we have, and the agriculture that we have shapes, frankly, the future of the planet, now that so much of it is given over to food production. So there's a whole issue of sustainability around our food choices. And also our food choices are the front line for our health, for our personal health every single day. And, that's why Jamie and myself and others are prepared to stand up and talk about the obesity crisis, which for a long time, it wasn't even in the news, where yet people, depending on, often depending on where they live, people's life chances and longevity were affected more than anything else by diet.
Now we're looking at those policies being reversed.
Now we're looking at reversing the obesity strategy.
We've been talking a lot recently about the new king as well, and the fact that he has been marked for being so opinionated over the years about many issues that he was incredibly pioneering on. And on the one hand, there's this need for him as the new monarch to keep his opinions to himself, his personal opinions. But on the other hand, at this stage, you wonder if perhaps his interest in farming and agriculture and being an environmentalist wouldn't be quite useful when it comes to holding sway in political circles.
Well, it has been useful, and it's been very influential. And in some ways, it's probably good for the discussion around agriculture that our now king had to wait so long to become king. He had to do something with his life for 70 odd years before he acceded to the throne. And what he chose to do was to really inform himself about farming and about the environment, and inform other people too. And I don't think he exceeded his influence or exceeded what was appropriate for his role. I think being the overall monarch, yes, it's a slightly different position. He's handed down some of those interests to the new Prince of Wales, and it will be interesting to see how he follows up on, whether to the extent to which he follows in his father's footsteps on the environment and on sustainability. He's already created this remarkable thing, the Earthshot Prize, a huge prize, a bit like the Nobel Prize, for people who come up with innovations and ideas that help us with the challenges that face the planet. Particularly climate change. So, to have people in high places keeping these conversations going is no bad thing, and even in the very highest royal places.
Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, thank you very much for joining me here on Times Radio. My husband's coming to learn how to gut a fish from you at River Cottage quite soon, so do look out for him.
Excellent, I look forward to that.
And lock the wine cellar. That's all I have to say.
No, it'll be open.
No, please. Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, thank you so much for joining me. River Cottage, Good Comfort is out today.